Let's talk about expressions and articulations in relationship to how you use them setting key switches in Overture 5. This is something that's important because it's going to be able to give you a lot greater expression in your music to be able to effectively control your sample libraries. And it can be a little confusing because there's a lot of different ways you can input the expression and articulations into your scores. So let's go through some of the methods of doing this. Now, when we bring up a score, I put a little block in here. Let's. All right. What I want to first do is start this thing off at some known sample in my libraries that I would like to begin at. And since it's a string piece, let's choose our arco uh, setting to set the initial sample key switch that I would like to use. Now, there are a number of ways to do this, but what we want to do is assign a different arco setting to each staff because I have a Chris Hine library up top and a East-West library in the bottom, and they use different key switches to get similar sounds. On the right side, you'll see in our track inspector that we want to go to the articulations and expression settings. Now, the way this works is anything that you see here on the right side is set by track. And that means I can set marcato, staccato, arco, any one of these major settings here. And if I go to another staff, I can set a different value for those things. So to do that, let's just click on a staff. We know we'll highlight the staff and get the little red line, and that will automatically bring us to the associated track on the right side. And let's begin by uh, assigning ARCO. Now, next thing I want to know is what library am I dealing with and what setting should I initialize that. So here's this new Chris Hine Italian violin. Let's start this thing off at C0 on a sustained vibrato. Now remember in Overture 5, most of the time you're going to have to transpose your key switch up an octave to get the value that you want. So I'm going to want to layer this in as C1. So what I'll go do then over here is I'll set ARCO to key switch of C1. Right? Now, uh, Overture 5 uses these default labels on things. I don't really care about them because whatever the sample library uses for that key switch is really what I'm going to get. So I just ignore these. I'm not sure if those can be reset or not, but I'm not worrying about it. It's the note value that I'm after here for the key switch. So I set that to C1, which will map to C0 as my key switch. And just to be safe, I want to apply that. Sometimes it seems apply you don't have to do, sometimes you have to do it. So to be safe, just always apply after your setting. Now I can attach ARCO to my staff in a couple different ways. I can go to the tool setting on the left side and then go to the expression heading and just drag ARCO onto my score from there. And then you can always click an articulation or expression and you'll bring up the map that'll show you what it's set to. And here, key switch is set to C1 equals C0 in my score. Now, for the second staff, there I have a different library. Let's say I want to set to, uh, I don't know, this one, F0, expressive up. All right, so then that means I have to set that one to F1. So I'll click on my second stave. Um, You notice how it automatically brought the arco down here? If I don't escape out, I'm going to insert, every time I click my score, I'm going to insert the current setting that's there. So I'll erase that for clarity right now. So now I'm on the second stave. Overture 5 automatically brings me up the settings for that. You'll see the key switch here is gone because now I need to set key switch for arco for the second stave. And for that, I want to set that to F1. And we'll find F1 right there. All right, I'll apply that. And then I can either drag arco like I did before. You can also click the measure and select expression and get it from there. But when you right click, like I just did, these tend to be applied per note if you're doing things. So they're equivalent. But if I double click that now, you'll see it's set to my F1. You can assign things both ways. Now, when I play my score, great. Now I'm set off to where I want to be. And let's go now and look at arco over here on the left side in my tool setting expressions. There are some things in here that are not on the right side. Those things are not assigned by track. Those things are globally assigned. And if you set them and bring them to different tracks, the same value will be set. However, the things that are assigned by track, doesn't even matter what you have this set to. I can bring this thing up and set its value. I set it to something weird, E3, all right? Obviously, when I pull this out and put it on the score, it's not set to E3. It's set to the C1 that I expect. Now, these things are smart enough to know that if I actually take that and drag it to my other staff and then click it, it's the F1 for that staff. Overture 5 is really smart with these things, all right? Another little tip is when you put these things on a note, right? With expressions, you don't have to tag them directly on the note. You just have to be near the note. But that little red line is important because that shows you where the expression starts after. So I have it right before the note. If I'd have put it over here after the note, then arco would have started here, and that wouldn't be what I would want. All right. So nice. What else can I do? Once you put an expression in your score, you can change it on an expression or articulation basis. Right? So what I could do here is, let's say I wanted to go arco to this point, and maybe that I wanted to have arco mean something different over here. Perhaps legato would be a better choice for that, but we're doing arco, so I'll show you. So I can put arco over here, all right? And that should set it to what I expect for the top staff, C1 it is. But if I wanted to, I could go in and change this manually to something different. I could change that to, I don't know, A1, right? And now when I click it, it's set to A1. Of course, if I drag another thing onto the score from before, that should be set back to C1. So in this way, you can assign the same marking, different values, and that could be very useful if you have some libraries like I do here, for example, where I've got a number of different shorts, a number of different spiccatos, and let's say I want to all map those to the same staccato symbol or something. I can manually change it so that I can alter the performance, finally, very easily. Another thing I can do with these things is copy them. So let's say I changed my arco to something and I want to use that later on. So what I can do is if I uh, set this guy here, say, and he's set to C1. So let's set him to something else, C2, say. Now, if I highlight this and just on Windows, it'll be different on a Mac. If I put it in the copy buffer and then paste it. Now, that was just the arco coming in from my click. So I want to escape out because I don't want the current assigned thing to come there. I want to take that, now copy. Now when I go and click on a measure and paste, now when I open that thing up, that's my C2, not the default. So you can always copy and paste individual items in your score. And this can be very useful, as I said, when you have one marking that you want to map to multiple things. Let's add a couple of pizzicatos in the same way. Um, so we'll bring over violin. Pizzicato is E0. I want to set that to E1 for the top line. And if you notice, pizzicato, I've already set it to E1. The bottom line is set to F sharp 6. That's because when I bring over this, it has to be F sharp 5 in this library, and now an octave higher. So let's put a couple of pizzicatos on, and now we'll apply them by right clicking on expression, and let's find ourselves a pizzicato, and that'll put it where I want it. And then maybe up here we'll do one around here, right click, expression, pizzicato, and let's click that. You'll see that's E1, and this bottom one is going to be F sharp 6. So now when I play, all right. Now, you'll notice this arco was set a little bit to the right of that note. And when I played this, you heard a pizzicato on the first note. That's because this was already set to pizzicato when I tested it before I did these settings. If I start that to the left now, that's what I expect. It's very important for you to know where that red line is. It's very easy to misplace it a little bit and you don't get what you expect, and you're searching for 10 minutes, something that's really very simple. So now let's add an expression that is uh, a global expression, something like dulce. Dulce is not going to be one of your options on your per track basis. So I can double click this and set it to something that I want. In this case, I set it to C sharp 1, which is going to be uh, C sharp 0 in here, which is just a straight sustain, right? So if I bring that over now, this is going to be C sharp 1, whether I put it on the top, and if I put dulce on the bottom, it's still C sharp 1. Of course, now I have the problem where in my other library, C sharp 1 might not be what I want, right? Well, we can deal with that as well. So when I now play, so you can hear it's just a straight sustain on the top there, and uh, it's some kind of legato now on the bottom, which actually works in this case. So for these two libraries, perhaps that might work, but maybe dulce in the bottom isn't what I wanted. Maybe dulce, I want this expressive vibrato G1, right? What I can do, remember, is any marking in the score itself, I can change. So I can change this thing to G1, uh, Where's G1? There it is. Okay. Now, remember, if I pulled dulce over again after doing something later on this stave and wanted dulce, that's going to default to my global setting. So the way I get around that is one of two ways. Either I can do what I did before, copy and paste. Oops, I want to escape out because I want to just copy and paste where I paste it. So now this dulce is my G1. So that's one way to do it. And what I suggest if you're doing that is just put in your whole line, and then when you want your dulces, just alter one of them to what your new key switch needs to be for your line, and then just keep copying and pasting them where you need them. Or if you wanted to, you could create a separate, you can always create a new expression of your own. You could call it, dulce 2, for example, and set that to your whatever new value you needed, and then that would only be the dulce you use for this line. That'll work fine for playback, of course, but if you wanted to print the score out, people would be staring at you pretty funny, wondering why you're putting dulce 2 in your score. So even though this way is a little more work, um, that's probably the preferred way to have a score that looks the way you would expect it to look. So I think you can understand expressions now, very flexible in how they can be treated. Let's say a few words about the articulations. They work very much the same way. Articulations have a set of default values that can be applied per track, and then there's a larger set that are more global, and you can treat them in global versus by track in the same manner. A few tips on the expressions, however. They should be placed um, uh, exactly on the note, whereas the expressions can be placed around them. And if we wanted to, we can do something a little tricky here. This library has three different kinds of shorts, right? That would be F0, F sharp 0, and G0. So let's define a staccato, say, for the base F0, which would be F1 for us for the top line. So here's my staccato, and this is set to the default staccato that Overture 5 assumes, and we'll set that to the value that we want, which is going to be F1. All right, and F1 is actually here under the default pizzicato. Um, uh, so what we can do then is apply just to be safe. And now let me add a couple staccatos, and I'm going to put it exactly right on the note because that's going to tag it to the note. And I will do this, say. And now what I can do is these guys, if I double click on it, it's set to my F1 that I expect. They all should be set that way, right? And they are. But let's say now I want to have a little more expression in this when I'm playing it. And maybe I want to have a couple of those staccatos playing these other shorts. Now I could define some expression for that if I wanted to, but if they're all kind of staccato to me, just with a little bit of different feel, this might be a better way just for the playing back of the thing to give yourself more expression. So I would want them to be F sharp 1 and G1. So I can change a couple of them here. Let's say I want this one to be F sharp 1 instead of F1. And okay. And this one I want to be G1. Okay, and let's say the others will revert back to the default. So I should have a little bit of difference now when I'm playing these things. So, and then of course it reverts back to the uh, non-staccato value that we had before. However, there appears to be one little gotcha here that we need to talk about. Um, when we do return to this C, what key switch is Overture 5 supposed to play for that? Um, we didn't tell it to do anything, and so it reverts, and it turns out that it seems to revert to C0, C1 in the Overture 5 case, but C0 in the case of your sample library. And I think we've already seen some people asking questions about, why does this default to some key switch value? And I think that's the reason. So what we need to do, and I can show you here to be, I've changed arco to actually be pizzicato. So when I take a look, when I go down at the end here, the last key switch, you see is going down to C0. And it's not taking what arco is, which was reset to be the pizzicato key switch. So I'm going to want to do something in this case. If I'm not happy with what the default of C0 is in my score, I'm going to want to tag after I've done articulations with uh, something else. Maybe I want to just bring back Dulce there, or Arco, or some other, or norm. Define a norm. Here we have a norm, so define that and bring that in. I don't know. It's a little counterintuitive, since in a musical score you might have a supposition there that you'd assume players would take. So you have to notate things explicitly with the key switches, but you do that anyway with the DAW. It's just that now we're working in notation, so you have to use a similar mindset. I think that's more than enough said on this subject for now, but if you've had been brave enough to listen to all this, I think you'll get a much better conception of how to use these markings in relationships to your libraries.